Um, Hello everyone. Welcome to yet another session of teachings on Nagajuna's letter to a friend with Zongsar Khyentse Khenra Wangchuk. So we're starting this session from verse number 38, which talks about food, basically, and how one should relate to food. So it reads, take food as medicine in the right amount, without attachment, without hatefulness. Don't eat for vanity, for pride, or ego's sake. Eat only for your body's sustenance. So, what does this mean? Well, the idea is that one should relate to food as being medicine, which is something that is helpful for our body. And one should not have an intention while eating, which comes out of the three poisons of desire or anger, or, well, mainly then the desire and anger, basically. Um, so it says not for vanity, to sort of really increase your body and become very big and grow. That would be an intention of desire. Or pride means that maybe you think that if you eat a lot, then your body will grow very strong. And in this way, you'll be able to defeat your enemies in battle. So and this is an attitude that comes from pride, basically. And then it says, for ego's sake, that you think that if you eat, you'll become extremely handsome or attractive or something like this. So this is not the idea. This is not how to relate to food, actually. We should think that I'll eat this food to be able to remain in the world, to be able to remain healthy and stay alive, basically, and not from an attitude of desire or anger or any of the negative emotions. Actually, we can't help anyone. We can't accomplish anything if we don't eat. So food is necessary as a kind of medicine. That's probably the meaning of this verse.
Yasan ta ti indu kalo de sai ripa sa gugire se tene che chi indwa sai ripa se de ta ka se gugo ngaron so ke teba kalo sa sa ki teba de tombu sun la go gugures ne tombu de kalo lu gures tombu ni ba de chu ge kong gures tombu sun ba de tomba go gures tene che kalo she ba ina ani kalo sa dong yabu se ya dires tene zubola yo pengiris tene shi gures le 다시 이 도알라 수바 대수 가수라 대도 데니 다 다분다부레
So there are also teachings on how to eat, how to sort of take a proper portion in the Vinaya and these kinds of texts that talk about the monastic discipline. And in those texts is taught that one should imagine that the stomach is divided into three parts. One part should be filled with food, one with water, and then the third part, the last third, if you will, should be left empty. If you do that, that's a good way of eating.
다 지제 손주 소그바 손주 소그바기 두대 촐라 동야메바 두대라 단지 시고바 제모니람 공이바데 게와든 로타실리다 텐데시네 아니 시구레스라 용 하자지 지기에 바레셔 대인도 레베다니 니마 타도동 제모 퉁지 때문에 되네니 나세 내부 미바 문주와 pendo denpa teda paldu naas. Ta ribi dani sedu jabol kobarwa. Jabo choro kanga ha konkin res, ngo tsenkin res. Tende imba yindu tini nima tada dong sedu. Ta 24 hours ndabu tende jila ngune shunwa yina. Ani gewa duya gewi ki lega teso zoya kimbeten shigu res. Tene tuze te tse gogu res. Nanka ge pena nante senda wodo nome senda wotende yeres. Ta tende shine tute tholo mando wa shine shijite yon kachibo chayires. Ye indu nanji te seyade pena tuze rabuji go sheba ina chuze domba ne godo sheki patende rabuji. Ane ta kasu go godo sheka ne sumbi patende jila ane patong she. Yon chuze sumba ne yeba ngabala soba tuba patende jila nanji me she ta tende she ne cha go ne tene nanji te don nanji me te sola ane gewa tuba to diba ponya la soba shishu kshawa te sushi tuba she na ane yabo yeres nase rebu mimba munju sedu semo malam kubik nega na tutnom bik ka sola nya kuya te tenda mando wa ji zogures te kande zogures sedu tene sonyi tuzen dende jila nga ya long yins kemba to dembik gone ane na te do me ni ki paru de la nya tende shewa ina tene yabo ungire esene tende advice ogi barita luduge yabo deje zombola dona nga zu tsembo ni kuya te gewa chaba zogu yena kono yabo kune ane soje jondende nyangi lindeba noshin shene ane nyal tende shewa ina yo gewa chogiru se tike jete so hendu geba otende risho.
Also Nimaki Tödi, nam tö se
Tunji
dumpa
te,
lasa
tunji
dumpa
te
ne
do tuji me, tape na chuse demba ne gudu shika panda wotende chila.
alle
Ta gondoro wa, evening,
lasa tö
tunji,
se tö se de shoppa chute dumpa ne kachiredo
tuji te se du, evening ki chuse tape na demba ne gudu shika panda wotende la yesas.
laso tene me
Me la na any morning,
alle laso
after between la yesari.
alle tang maso
Ti
ti
paro la gap da wuji gogindo wa. Gap goya de la nga zu ni kuguya rindo, ni nyawi kitu se insaro wa.
alle laso ne katsu shoppa la katsu langore so
Ta yeba nga wa, yeba se la na di yesari.
shiba
Oh,
ah
me se ya de.
la
Tene
laso
yeba nengo tsu yi tene rabu.
ya
Ti paro la nya kuya she.
oh yeah. Okay, so this next verse, verse number 39, is about not wasting our time. And in particular, here it's speaking about sleep, how to sort of make our relation to sleep a little bit more meaningful, take it in the direction of virtue. So it reads here. I hope that this translation matches with the commentary because, yeah, oh knowledgeable one, recite all day and in the first and last watch of the night. Then in between these two, sleep mindfully, so that your slumbers are not spent in vain. So the beginning here, the knowledgeable one, this refers to the king. Nagajuna is addressing the king, saying, "O knowledgeable one, you who know all, you who understand everything." Um, and then it says, recite all day. Um, Basically, it means that the whole day, um, 24 hours, ideally should be spent on virtuous activities, something meaningful. But then we somehow have to divide our time. And it talks here about the um, first and last watch of the night. So Kempula suggested that this would mean something like we have a period of time, something like 7:30 to 9:30 in the evening, and then in the morning, something like 4 o'clock. So you put those two, and then in between those, one tries to sleep mindfully. Um, this is what it says, right? Sleep mindfully. And this is something that one can do by having a specific intention while going to sleep, thinking, okay, now I'm going to sleep and I'll get up at such and such a time, and then I will do something meaningful. So you make it intentional somehow. We can actually approach going to sleep in this way with a good intention. And in fact, we should. We can think of it as lying down to sort of emulate the Buddha when he passed into final nirvana. When we lie down to sleep, we're also passing into final nirvana, right?
라서 드니다 이주 시제 이주 되게 장소 삶의 이게 거기에 인도와 장소 삶의 예보대 그래 임바 애니테 감 쉐바이나 펜도 가리 예비고 되게 인도와라 대 인도 장도 이제 다도 가와도 또냐 또도 용도 감바지 고마 니바 만주 때다요 손빈지대 대화 토반 주르세 다 나도 논주 샴바 셈이 히지 셈이 가와 셈이 또냐 셈이슬레 고 immeasurable parts 되지 라야 제로다 계속 다대 인도 계속 그 꼴대 얘긴도와 샴바 세데 간데지 세기스도 생기 돼서 대화 토나 간데 여부 누 sombe기 다 셈바 좀보텔라 샴바세 아니 니바 니제세야데 생기 돼서 동아 그 조동 까나 간데 여부 예리 sombe기 다 그런 좀보텐데라 니제세 테니 가와세나 데이 조동 마다나 세 생기 돼서 다 개와 시바도 마다나 som바타 보텐데 아니 토냐 세두 ronshole gabo me gejole dombo me kanga neutral shine tende ke ani sonuji shibata abata tende de tonya sene tende ke tsami gibo de todo namba kundo jabu choro nyane shitu bayina tene keson debula loson soji kompo de totugi meba yina yo ani ko mao pa na 내가 서 총빈 지대인기 대화대 토기레스래 플라 총빈 지대 대화대 토는데 저기레스래 다 되게 돼서 예서 알죠.
All right. So the next verse, verse number 40, speaks about what we commonly refer to as the four immeasurables. And so the verse reads, constantly and perfectly reflect on love, compassion, joy, impartiality. And should you not attain the higher state, at least you will find bliss in Brahma's world. So here, the four immeasurables of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity is something that's comes up quite a lot in these kinds of texts in the Buddhist teachings, right? So that's what it's talking about. And here, love means wishing for sentient beings to have happiness. Compassion means wishing that they do not have suffering and the cause of suffering. And the immeasurable of joy, immeasurable joy is this thought or this wish that may sentient beings not be separated from this cause of happiness. And then equanimity, the last one, is this attitude of equality, where one is not particularly attached to or averse to anyone. So being beyond liking and disliking people. That's what that means. And the advice here that Nagarjuna gives is if you can do this, O king, even if you don't immediately reach Buddhahood, for the time being, you will have the result of being born in Brahma's world. So this refers to the god Brahma's realm.
그래서 다 대인도 처음에 이해서 라고 준세 때 미유 생치 미바지라 미시네 안데부 개송때 미바지 토지에바 인존데 준세라 땡시네 아니 처음에 이해서 라셔바레 숨바
The reason that these are called immeasurables is because the focal objects of sentient beings, they are also immeasurable. There are countless sentient beings, and the benefit or the result of doing this practice is also immeasurable. So this is why these four are referred to as the four immeasurables.
pena uma jibala sabate so kasula nije tela sanjila mebe nije chela mebe nije miba mebe nije nda wosende kada mobo ke chiyere konje sanjila mebe nije sete soso chibu jila yebe nije tele labare chela mebe nije sete niete papi jili yeba de la yere ane kasego tanda miba mebe nije sete shosan papa te so jila yeju nije tele ke chiyere taina tanda ndel misashile ke ma dewa te so la te so tonga de ngode shindo.
Voilà, so then in other texts, like the entrance to the middle way, the Madhyamaka Avatara, there are also explanations of compassion. And there it is taught that there are three kinds of compassion. Compassion which focuses on sentient beings, compassion which focuses on phenomena, and compassion without focus. So these three then correspond to compassion which normal beings have in their mind stream, compassion which Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas have in their mind stream, so noble beings who practice the Shravakayana, and the compassion without focus, the third kind. That is the kind of compassion that noble bodhisattvas have in their mind stream. And this is not really taught here in our text, but this explanation comes from the commentaries actually.
Tande pena shomba se dezo gam she tende sheba ina ane pento chebo yibi keja mombo ke yere shomba tuze tundu jil gam sheba ina yo ane rebu jachebo toje ba yimba pena ngema amaji do pomoji chu kangal chi shene any chu kinol lu shene any amagusana pomo de chu pagal le nasan pomo gusana ama de chu pagal le nasan shamba gan shene any kasego ta kozuni any ta so ho shene any temato de ko layuli shi so yin ba tindeji chu kangan rando yinki ki hindu ki sadhu tindeji ki thong so re shebare shezon ta sadhu de ki any 초 강간로는 주셔봐이나 디바톤에 아니 라유리 시기 예사레선에 아니 다 단다발라 아니 힌두 김메테서 초 강갈레 조야게 로소테텐데 시슈가 바레스 우네시나 코론 기탄도 다 마고리 마도 샴바건에 라유리 시기에 마도 초 강갈레 주 땅디 고네 디바톤에 라유리 시에 데예 마레스 아니 가시테 예와이나 초 강간노레 냐동 frog las wa mombo yero ta te solo diba ta gu yanda bo tende nesu ngir se yeri.
So it's taught that meditating on love, for instance, is very beneficial. And even if it's just a short time, it can give a really extraordinary result. So there's a story about how in the past there was a mother walking with her daughter, and suddenly both of them fell into the river Ganga, and both of them immediately had the thought concerning each other of love. The mother thought, "Oh, I hope that my daughter at least gets ashore, that she might be saved." And the daughter similarly thought, "Oh, I really hope that my mother can be saved from this, that she can come ashore." And so they passed away with these thoughts in their mind. And after they had passed away, they were immediately born in the God realm. And then it seems like probably a Hindu sadhu saw this. And from his perspective, it seemed as if that it was because they passed away in the river Ganga, in the Ganges River, that they were then, born in a higher state. So he attributed the sort of being born in heaven or in the God realm as being due to the power of the river itself. And so to this day, Hindu practitioners place a great emphasis on bathing in the water of the Ganges. But um, actually, what determines whether you'll be born in the higher realm or not is not about some river which has special qualities. It's actually about the purity of your mind stream. That's what really makes the difference.
Laso ta tsije ji ju heji pa. Ta nga zo kondu pe na shamba don nije don gawa do tonya la sa tse me ba yibo te so gan she ba ina. Ani te yi kin debu la sonten se ji ta togi re. Ani chomben ji ten tu shegi se ke te she urwa. She zan ta sonten ete gan sheba ina debu kare kare togi re se agi tuwa rabu tende le yero. Cheson ta di keja di ke lendu la eni tanda tsike giji pa de shunga ba tende yinba ki yere. Ndeshe ga don, dedu dunga don, namba pome, sonde yibo yin. Son don, wesa ga don, geje don. Debu chela non don, kanyo to se ati.
So now we come to verse number 41, which discusses, um, well, if we take these four immeasurables of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity as the objects of our meditation, then we will eventually reach these states called the four dhyanas, um, or the four sort of higher states of meditative absorption. And then the question might arise, well, meditating on these four dhyanas, what's the benefit? What's in it for us? And so this verse gives the answer to this. And so it reads, the four dhyanas, which in turn discard pursuit of pleasure, joy, and bliss and pain, will lead to fortune equal to the gods in Brahma, light, great virtue, or great fruit.
대전다 산소 생명 기부대수 녀리 제바이나 손대 세야데 레우기레스다 강기차기 녀리 데로와 아니 디고네다 아 순주자스 그 한에 대솔 시와리기레스 깨게데 예로와 대전다 손대 이기세야데 가리레스 깨게 운두 아니 손대 동보 손대 니바 손대 손바 손대 제바세데 신화로와 제가 손된 동보세 간대지 세기세도 되네 대셰 셀란도와 데비 칸게 댕기 치트솔라 생엠바힘바데 파뽕 미게 줄레 셰바시바데 파뽕네 되네 가르세 그루고 센라 가와동 루라 데와 잉케게 아니 미발라 쯔지도 네비게 다 뇽렌 생기 뇽렌지 레이르스텔라 아니 손데 동보 시기르스 동보 텔라나
Also, dökam ki devala chakpapangne, tene migewachu pangne,
대기 치가라 잡아뽕네 댕강기 대세 대기 치가라
ale
잡아뽕
tene migewachu pangne, ene gewatsechi tunne tubiadi, something tampo segriva.
lula gawa sel dewa yeba chaoshene ani gewala tsejido nebegi sengi chaji legiris tate sonde tambola giris
All right. So, these four immeasurables, meditating on these, by doing that, it's possible to reach these dhyanas, which are a kind of meditative concentration. And practicing those, essentially, it's said that one will be born in the heaven of the 33, which is a particular God realm. And so there are four that are enumerated. So the first dhyana, the second dhyana, the third dhyana, and the fourth dhyana. And the first one, we'll start with that, is when one sort of overcomes attachment to five pleasurable objects of the desire realm. One abandons the 10 non-virtues. There's a sense of physical and mental bliss, and one is able to focus the mind one-pointedly on virtue. When all of these criteria are met, then this is called the first dhyana.
tene sonde niba siade sonde tombo de shencha yinba ji da shene ani rongi gisala rongi kosa de la yichiba yeba shene yon sen mibala tsejidu netoba ji le yeris de la sonde niba sigiris
Yanya Chisuna, de
sonde
Santa Tamboke,
sonde niba siade
Lada.
sonde tombo de la shen yinba da shene ani de la gabo maji ne ani rongi nesa gisa de la yishi yeba shene ani sen mi bala neto batinde yeri stil sonde ni basi yires.
Um, the second dhyana is to sort of once again have this one-pointed concentration, but seeing how actually the first one has a certain coarseness. It's not so subtle, and then not liking the first dhyana, wanting to progress further from the first dhyana, one reaches the second dhyana.
Tene sonten sumba seyate hase tese yirta lula gawa ye ye dewa deyo pa yu sela dewa ye dewa deyo pa yu ne ene san tsejidu ne toba shunwa de la sonten sumba se yires.
So in the second dhyana, there was still then this kind of physical and mental bliss. And the third dhyana is that one actually relinquishes, um, gets rid of both this physical and mental bliss. That is the third dhyana.
Tene sonten yiba seyate ta tsowa dewa tsowa donga ri kare ina teso pa pong ne ene karse gurgo tsowa dedu ki keja teso kanga meba ene san tsejidu ne tobi ki chatinde jila sonten yiba se la yires.
And the fourth dhyana is basically going beyond any kind of pleasurable or painful sensation. So it's a state where one has no sense of something being pleasurable or painful whatsoever.
Keza sonten ndebi kone kyong sonten tombo de teze yaga sonten tombo tele kyong nipa de relaxation de teze yaga nipa tele kyong sumba de ki relaxation de yaga sumba tele yiba de teze yaga yinpa ta tende junse kone ye gisari.
So we can understand this in terms of how, compared with the desire realm, the first dhyana has a higher degree of realization, where it's a more subtle state of meditation. And compared with the first, the second is even more subtle. And compared with the second, the third is even more subtle. And compared with the third, the fourth is even more subtle. That's how we can take it.
Keza ta tende ki sonten yibo de nyolin she shewa ina ndebu kare ungiri lana teni ndebu hla tsombi ki ne le yire hla wesa ki ne la le yire hla geje ki ne la le yire hla ndebu chewi ki hla ne teso le ne eni hla teson ta hodon nyamba ki ndebu tende toya yires shezan tende yinbo yindu eni tsayme iye don sonde yibo teso nyolin shi toya shi ju teso kachibo resi le ta ludu ki advice jabol te shene eni ngaron sola la ungi sari.
So then the later part of the verse then um, talks about if we practice these four, then what do we get? What's the result? Well, it'll be possible to take birth in the realms of the gods, such as these realms that are called here Brahma's realm, the light realm, the realm of great virtue, or the realm of great brute. So, because of that reason, then the advice which Nagarjuna is giving all of us and the king is that it's very important to practice the four immeasurables and these four dhyanas, these four higher states of meditative concentration.
어떤 데죠? 다른 데서 그 거를 돼서 le tombo patiso te kala khabona yabare ngemban zela soba yabu shonja yena ani sonde gibo te so ngotse ya tende uyere ta te ga zon jindel hiena digi sare.
This might be a little bit difficult to relate to for beginners, these four dhyanas and all of that. If you have some familiarity with Abhidharma, then it's pretty straightforward. It'll be easier to understand, but otherwise, maybe not so much. So perhaps we'll leave that discussion.
다 지제 이게 지 괜히 봐 de 가르쳐 얘기를라나 le gewa 인한다 le 미ge와 인한다 또 제야 누바 제야 돼 간데시 저기를 저한다 보길래 윤두 아니 대기 렌돌라 준센 든데 레스네 다 준센 넘바 나이 고네 아니 루두케 le gewa dinde gone to chibu chogiri le migewa dinde shena to chibu chogiri se dinde ngote shene ni le gewa shia tila tono te guye ba dinde gilaja ji ye ba dinde resha te indu to don nyeba hendo imbo me yeten so ne yile shun le gidu mede na nga chimbo te dewe gewa shela tsemba ji se labar.
Now we come to verse number 42, which kind of talks about the question of what kind of virtue is the most powerful or impactful? How can we practice in such a way that it becomes really reliable? So Nagarjuna here gives five sort of criteria, five things to be aware of, where both virtues and non-virtuous behavior becomes quite powerful and impactful where these five are present. So the verse reads, "Great good and evil deeds are of five kinds, determined by their constancy, their zeal, their lack of counteragent, their perfect fields. So strive in this respect to practice good."
그래서 동보 다동세 되게 joa que te que joa nazo tu ta zo de te ani nu pa che yeres gewa ina da me gewa ina pena ta pucha te so que taba sanji se te ne chi de du ani kozo ge diba me gewa te huche ye ba ani lama ta wa te so tu ta du khanden den ya da bo do ta ganyo le la so ba shi de du ani lama ta wa te so ge za wa te nu pa che ye ba da bo ta joy gone junse te res ani ngemba khimba se du somba kolong gone kolong cheshu pena hidong da bo hiwoji kushene senji sena te diba chebo chogiye ba tega noje sojeji kompon toban debi gone senji teso teni melan da bo ji ja sheba ina yo te nuba cheya ye ba imba teni nibo me ba se du le gewa ina da mi gewa ina da ta le mi gewa da bo ji na ta te pa me ba zoguna te la zoze ki ta me ba da bo le gewa da bo ji na ani kin pa je kongi yo me ba zo mu tu ba no je tende gewa da bo ta ye ra nibo me ba se tende te so to cheya ye ba imba teni ye den to de yile shwa se du ta de la no se ni shene ye den gi hin pe na kanjo sumbon da bo desol tene gewa shene da mi gewa shewa ina to cheya chogi ye ba ani pendo bi hin se pamala so ba tene gewa shene da mi gewa shene da te hu cheya ungi ye ba imba shezon ta tende gi junse nomba ngai gi gone shu ga ju gewa ina da mi gewa ina da ta te chimbo res chimbo imbi junse ka sen ta ji do teso gindebu nomi de juan ni pe rongi ti tende jires tende imba indu teni ta jabu choron gewa dubala zan tobajido gewa dubala hu gewa shijute ani kachibu chabares labares.
So it talks here about how when these factors are present, then whether it's virtue or non-virtue, it becomes very impactful or powerful. So um, constancy here means to always be engaged in a particular kind of activity. So we can think about the example of a butcher. Since a butcher is always involved in killing animals, then this constancy is going to lead to the sort of negative imprint, the non-virtue becoming more powerful. And on the other hand, if we think about monks and lamas, religious practitioners, since they're always engaged in some sort of dharma practice, recitation, and so forth, then their regularity, the regularity with which they perform these practices, means that the virtue is more powerful as well. Then it talks about zeal. So, zeal is maybe something like their motivation or the attitude. If you have a grand attitude, like wishing to attain complete Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings, and you have a really strong wish to reach that goal, then with that strong impetus, that strong motivation, your virtue will also become more powerful. Then it speaks about the lack of counteragent. So here, both when it comes to non-virtuous and virtuous states of mind, there's always some opposite, right? Um, so then, for example, anger, the opposite of anger is love. And if we have a lot of anger but no love, then our anger is going to be expressed very strongly and very powerfully. And then on the other hand, when it comes to virtue, if we have virtue but no opposite of virtue, we're going to be able to practice virtue in a very efficient and sort of wholehearted way, basically. And then on the other hand, we have the um, finally then the perfect field. This refers to sort of the recipient of a particular action, and it's divided into two here. The first would be the field of the three jewels. So, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. If you do something virtuous with regard to the three jewels, with three jewels as your object, then this is very powerful. This is very impactful. On the other hand, if you commit non-virtue with regard to the three jewels, then that's also said to be very impactful or powerful kind of action. And the second division then is parents, our parents, which are called the field of benefit. If we serve our parents or if we hurt our parents, both of these are said to be especially sort of powerful actions with a stronger kind of result. So the advice here is, O king, actions that are undertaken with all of these factors present have a very strong result. They're very powerful. So please be mindful of this. Pay attention to this.
아 이주 회선 그 지제 되게 내가 이르다 다 논중 아주 개완다 조종 조시네요 상상 미개와 안다 조시가 와이나 티키나 사부 초기 말이 왜 했을 텐데 계절 지저와 저zon다 디기 저하기 렌돌라 대 초기 말이스 데라 아니 헤노조기 말이스를 빼된자네 티게 이주 회선 반데 얘긴도와 lensa songa chuni chumuki roju jiji kangi numetar. Tegi dibi leji chumuyo gewi tawa yonla chimbanzes. Ta pede nguma ye yerwa lensa sena tsarwa tsa. Sal tsa nyunyu ji ke chu nyunyu ji ke ro de ju tugire madu cho kanga noshin chu mumbo ke ro de ju tugi nuba de ye mares. Te noshin de gindu dibi le chungu chungu ji shewa ina te ki gewi le jachebu teso la kanga te tugi mares. Gewi le te chimbo res. Tende ki kote ludu chorong hakwa shene. Ane gewa jachimbo nonju zogi eba la chansa mige wanda zo kone. Tene senlan jeba le ne, henon le ne. Sakare shigo ina sambi ki sonu tende te. Ane kogo ya ye mares le. Tende ki laja jasungwa resho.
So, the next verse, number 43, talks about this situation where one is normally engaged in virtue, in, let's say, Dharma practice. But what if, due to the circumstances, one simply can't avoid doing a little bit of non-virtue, doing something which is a little bit negative? Doesn't that ruin everything? Doesn't that sort of destroy all the virtue that I've been accumulating? We might have this kind of worry. But then this verse tells us that actually, no, you don't have to worry. So the verse reads then, a pinch of salt can give its salty taste to a little water, but not to the Ganges stream. So know that likewise, minor evil deeds can never change a mighty source of good. If we have just a little bit of salt and pour it into a little bit of water, then we will be able to change the flavor of that water and make it salty. But a little bit of salt, if you pour it into something like the river Ganges, the Ganges stream, you're not going to be able to change the flavor of the Ganges just like that. And similarly, a small non-virtue can't affect a great virtuous activity simply because the virtue is so great. So therefore, King, please take note of this. If you have to do something, some minor non-virtue, don't get too worried or scared about that. Don't feel too much regret, basically.
Eso tande gewa chunchu ke diba jachimbo teso nuba meba zotugi mares. Ane diba chunchu ke gewa ja chebo teso nuba meba zotugi mare. Teso la sende gugi mare se keje te hie sonare.
So basically, we should understand that a small virtue cannot eradicate a really huge, big non-virtue. And a small non-virtue similarly cannot eradicate a really grand virtuous action. So we shouldn't be too worried about those small kinds of non-virtues, basically.
Tatiche giti heji pa te ki nga zo la hlaba sun se ji nyolin shia ye res. Shezon hlaba sun de nyolin shia la parche shinkin nda menda chi nga ye res. Tela driba nga si ye res. Ta driba nga bo te kare kare inba ngote she ne. Ani driba nga bo te nga ro so sanje le un ma chi upi tashi shi gore. Se tatende keje ji heji ye wa recha. Te indu gedon gedon nese mupaton. Ni don de la ndon do tesante. Diba ngabun de do gewi no. Topi changku labor chimpanze esene. Ta geba se de sen geba. Sen femisi no yin chimbo zole 청라 청도와 따고 된데들라 개바스. 아니 개바스나 답변미시 존이 셰샤스네. 센라 개바시야 된데들와 regrets that. 내센스나 아니 바로 그 다가서 잘로 니본다고지. 아니 토구도 seleta. 요나 바로 보기 잘로 니본다고지 매바 쳐고서 레스네. 다 센디네 된데 선반다고. 얘네 무발라나 센데 논드 쿠네 센 갈라글 센 도마 메바조아 차바 근데 니 라나타 니 쿠야데로와 데니 데발란 dum바세두 네기치 주 제본다보 다 님본다보 가보시바 아니 태산세때 아바 토기 예나 다 타비기주 런지 dim바세야 텐데 예나상 간데 예나상 타마셰바시바 태산 다데히에 운두 데니 가르세 게바돈 제바테소 찌 신도 예사로와 동가체 운두 가스나 테소게 다 라바 수른지 라바라 소바 냐스 레와라 케바지 시예사로와 에데가 노시 니도 무바테니 찌찌 네세 찌찌 된 데발란 dum바세 찌찌 예시에 데니 테손세 데 나시레 테솔 드바 나시 이리스 테소 소소 그 생기딜라 예와이나 에니 게와 주노 임바 노시 라바 숨보 테소 뇽레 제마토바 아니 드방가 보데 쿠만다 보지레스 데니 주노 노시 라바 숨보데 콘도기레스 제존타 텐데게 드방가 보테소 나론소 잘라 마후와라 타시시 고레스 텐데 네스테소 자부초론 친구기레스네 텐데 라자 자바리다
Die nesem nesem sedutta parabola nebakiarwa.
레레레
Ore. Tene
다
dela dutta
유지 미게와 나센 네센시알노 네센 데린도와
laso. Tene di dela dun sedu di de chat anti parwa.
네기치라 가보시바
Laso. So we have this verse number
마레
44. Laso. Tene
미키 줄 가보시바
Miki zu.
나이
Laso.
달라 가보시바
Laso. Uh-oh. It looks like Kampala's internet just dropped. Hope that he comes back soon. Oh, there he is. Okay. So,
라
la tangi indi tola lagi.
라소
So, in this verse number 44, the next one, it's speaking about how, so there's something called the three trainings, the three higher trainings. And basically, there are five things that obstruct us from successfully accomplishing these three trainings. And they are the items here enumerated in this verse. So it says, wildness and remorse and hateful thoughts, and dullness, somnolence, and yearning lust, and doubt are hindrances. Please know these five are thieves that steal the gem of virtuous deeds. So These five are being introduced here in this verse. And wildness here refers to a wild mind, an agitated state of mind. Remorse means basically regret, thinking about something that you did in the past and thinking, oh, that was very bad. I wish I hadn't done that. Hateful thoughts refers to this um, malice, which is one of the mental non-virtues, wanting to harm someone else. Um, then we have dullness, somnolence. So dullness is being very kind of drowsy, an unclear, sort of foggy state of mind. And then somnolence is kind of a fancy word used in a translation here, but basically just means sleep. The Tibetan word being used here means being sleepy. So being dull and sleepy, basically. Um, then we have yearning lust, which is basically desire, um, feeling very attracted to the um, sense objects, such as beautiful form or pleasant smell and so forth. And then finally, we have doubt. And this really refers to doubt about whether the sort of the path is authentic or not, and so forth. So kind of a doubt about the teachings of the Dharma. And here, how do we get to five? Well, that's by taking one and two. So wildness and remorse, they're counted as one, and then dullness, somnolence, or dullness and sleepiness, they're also counted as one in this way. And the advice here is that please regard these five um, hindrances as a thief that steal away the wealth of the three trainings. So,
Three trainings like the
Lhasa,
Sheila, about Sheila, any about paramita,
Lhasa,
any meditation.
Lhasa. So these three trainings that we've been referring to, they are the trainings in discipline, wisdom, and meditation. That's what's being referred to here. So these are going to hinder you in practicing these three. And so they're like a thief that steals away your wealth. They're gonna steal away success in practice. So you should really avoid these. That's the advice.
Lazo ta tamatiri jitu kenga pate. Ta longa se jinga tu hegirwa. Tongla jolan, tongla gangla muro lang se tende hedu. Jolan ka su nyolin shi ju kare imbi kor. Nyolin shi ju te la ramunda nga yeba te ngote shene. En te so le tono te gibi ko ji hegire. Te don tsendu ta don tenpa ton. Tengi tenzi hera chencho nga nyi te. De la nge zen ze jin te da ne. Ondo heji tsemo choba las. Te karlag se du. Jolan ki nyolin shi ju ki chi chi de teba se ya te res. Tanda ki teba de fo nobu tutu ke nelu la hi chiba shiba te la sumbari. Ane tsendu te nipa re. Demba ki nelu nyolin shiba la tsendu shiba. Ane tenpa se du demba ki nelu mutatu kan tong dame se nda wote so sen la majiba shiba te sumbari. Tene tengen se te yiba demba ki nelu la sonu tone nyamba gaba shiba. Tene hera se de ngaba demba ki nelu yabo hako wa shibi ki hera. Tende ki chi ndamda ngabo chodu chuba ki chi res. Sheza ta teso ki soje toba la lega shiro shi res. Cheshi tomo mayi ba yenki tende res. Tendu ngabo deso la tono tene nyole shi tuwa shi gures jabu choron ki teso tula garu chis ani ngabu teso chanza to chogiris chanza on chebo yaba chogiris chanza yon jonla tsemo se tende ge chogiris ta koronso ki shile la tene o tende re teso tono tero ji nyole shi tuwa shi ru chi se tende ge laja di dasware.
So, in the next verse, which will be the final for this session, and then there'll be time for questions. We talk about something called the five paths. The five paths are the path of accumulation, the path of joining, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. So here, this verse is speaking about what is needed on the path of joining, that which comes right before the path of seeing. So at this point, the verse is telling us with faith and diligence and mindfulness and concentration, wisdom, five in all, you must strive hard to reach the highest state. As powers, these forces take you to the peak. Um, so faith refers to this kind of trust in three jewels. Um, Diligence refers to the fact that on this path of joining, what one is practicing with reference to is the reality of the Four Noble Truths. So, in order to practice the reality of the Four Noble Truths, you need diligence. To not forget about the Four Noble Truths, that's mindfulness. That's the third one. Then you need concentration. So being concentrated on this reality of the Four Noble Truths. And finally, wisdom, the wisdom which correctly understands these Four Noble Truths. That's what one needs in that particular context. And then it also says as powers and as forces. So they're referred to sometimes with different names, sometimes as powers and sometimes as forces, depending on their function. So basically, depending on the context.
계속 대인도 찬성 또 라기를 찬성 온보 라기를 찬성 세모 라기를 라기 너 킹아부들라 페나 존라텔라 이게라 그래도 세모 친조세 존라 제비크 카술라 아니 킹아부들라 또 세기레스 가르스나 제바기 문두쇼 파메발라 누바 체보 예바 인상 또 라기레스 존라 대기 내가나 키노지 넬루 도발라 온 체보 예자 온보세 라기레스 존라 제목 가스라 아니 기타와테서 페토바기 레가시기리 아니 제모스인데 미타기리스 다데 실레기 고네라 소마르와
Um, Jorlam ta chashi shi yorwa te thambo de ming kaina
다 존라 대도 제모 제바 친조세여와
la so
대도 제모 제바 친조
la so la.
대기기 제모기기 제바기기 친조
So the path of joining here has various different stages on it that are referred to in different names, like heat, peak, and endurance. So, depending on which particular point one is at in this path of joining, um, for example, on heat, in that stage, these five are referred to as five powers. Then, in another context, in patience, for instance, they're called the five forces. And then in this stage called peak, then they themselves are called um, peak, basically. And this is because on the different stages of the path of joining, they perform slightly different functions in how they sort of impel one towards virtue.
계속다 덴바기 동아 덴바 kunju 덴바 랑지 덴바 고비 덴바 세두 동아 덴비 넬루데 메타 동아 또 담에 세 예로 체시기 데솔라 이치바시바 데소 생기 마지바시반다고 다텐데시네 헤구이르 다테소 페 몽보 헤구이르 펜다 지자나 동아 덴비 넬루데 메타 파임바 동하와 임바 톰바 임바 다메바 임바 텐델 텔 세이르
Di dumun den bereba.
레
So then, what are these Four Noble Truths that one is practicing on the path of joining? Well, they are the four of the truth of suffering, the truth of the origin of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path leading to the cessation of suffering. And here, when we think about the truth of suffering, we can understand it in terms of these three topics or facts that we have to sort of try to understand, being impermanence, suffering, and empty and selfless. So we have to make sure that we understand these and that we can apply them to the mind. So this was the first, right?
올라서 다차서 아니 자 휴마체 투제 예나 자 사데딜조 체 투제 메나 산딜조 투제 지바이
Lazo, so zanima chena dixereve.
운디기르
Lazo. Okay. Um, so that'll be it for today. We're so happy that everyone joined. And next time is going to be the same time, also on Sunday. So that's it. Tiwa tana dixerva.
대화에는 디사리 당하고 와이파이 히라 템보 문도이나 대화에는 디기르와
Lazo. Kimberla's Wi-Fi is not super stable, but if you have some questions, then it's okay to ask those. Um, if no one else has a question, then I have a question that I would like to ask actually. Kimberla Dixerve.
디기르라
Laza. So, um, in some Dharma texts, there's this term like a Dharma bear, chöje, sejik. So a Dharma bear, like someone who hears Dharma over and over again, but it doesn't really touch them. They don't really become transformed. And I just wonder, what can we do if we know someone who we think is a little bit like this? What can we do to help them?
제딧 부디스트
이제
제딧 다카고 히오르 다데 다콜라 용조 다마 콜레티테소 콜라 라야로와 아니 다마 랄린 투투나 펜도 예바 ha kone lali matuna en pendo me bateso koda sabu te tuwaina da paju pendo kaburo
Yeah, jaded Buddhists, it's hard to help them. It's good to talk about the qualities of the Dharma and how it really works if you put it into practice. But if you don't put it into practice, just knowing about the Dharma doesn't help you at all. That's how it is. Okay. Um, so here is a question. Um, how can regret be a hindrance if it leads to remorse, which leads to change in the person for the better?
karese
Ting also karsa nampanga tenso ki nalola sungidwa dripa dripa
gepa
nga kapso ti gyapa se ade ta chochin samata na gyapa di yapurwa gyapa di latte ne tening also ya di chena diki mares di tene susuki gyapa ke ne tene mao pala leka letan dites chene tene yapur red rogerwa ta kare chena dripa res gyapa
ale ta gepa se de roa ani gewa dubal gepa shi na si yesarwa
laso. Here in this context, the regret is about doing something virtuous. If you feel regret or remorse about having done something good, then that's a hindrance. And then there's another question, which is in verse 41, it is said that it's fortunate to be born in the God realms. But isn't that realm not suitable for practice?
la
네, 가서 직접적인 나라로 와. 음,
sanso
네,
seme ye gane la yu la shi yire se de
제 이니야 사 율라 냠렌치야 요마로 와. 네, 사 율게야 네 야포 레멘도 와.
la yu le she na ta tori li shen ro yero ngeson do tori ni compare she na tori de yoga yero
Yeah, but if you're born in the God realms, you're in the higher realms. And if you compare the higher realms with the lower realms, the higher realms are still better.
kasen haya ran la halo ya bu sa ye jure tulo ya bu chen ye jure kanga pa fe de ye jiro
You know, because in the higher realms, there's probably going to be really tasty foods and nice clothes to wear, and everything's going to be really nice.
tene
Tinimindo.
aso
All right. So then, oh, yes, we'll end here for today. So thank you, everyone, and have a great week, and we'll see you next weekend.
Thank you very much,
okay thank you
Olaf.
ula
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. See you next week.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
bye bye